You're now recording. Excellent. Hi, Rose.
Hi.
And everybody who's watching this, if you didn't come to our last conversation with designers, this is a new thing we're starting. And Rose is our second Texan. We're having all the Texans. Yeah, a former student of ours, Austin Sandy, is down in Texas now. And so he's not, you're in Austin though, right? Or outside Austin?
Yep. In Austin.
In Austin. How long have you been there?
10 years, 10 or 11 years, something like that. 12 years, I don't know.
You're like, long, I don't know. It's Austin, so it's cool.
Yeah.
And just so those of you students who are, and also Rose knows, this is just us talking. She's got some pretty official stuff to share, which is good. We'll also have questions.
Sorry, my dog.
You never have to apologize for a dog.
Sorry.
Is it German Shepherd?
Retriever mix.
Nice. Well, let's see, Rose, you and I, we met, I had to look at the dates, 2012 in Los Angeles.
That's right.
The 6th International Conference on Design Principles and Practices. And all I remember that is that I get lost everywhere and you never got lost. And then I saw you again the next year in Japan, Chiba/Tokyo. And again, you never got lost. So I just tried to hang out with you as much as possible, along with the fact that you're cool.
I do have an internal compass. I always know which way north is.
God, lucky. And yeah. And also you just, I don't know, you just never ever got lost. So, but enough about me getting lost and you not getting lost. Oh, but by the way, just so we have this clear, you guys, we were at a conference, we both presented. We were just like, hey, I know you again, yay. And we were like, we're in Tokyo. We've seen most of the conferences that are being presented. So we went to Tokyo Disney.
Yeah, we kind of played hooky for a hot second, but it was research. We were looking at the behavior of an American mindset or setup and how it related. And it was actually quite interesting to see Japanese people engaging in a format that's really kind of made by Americans. So.
Mm-hmm. And also, just so you guys know, if you've ever been to Disney World, Disneyland, not so much, but Disney World, it is just like Disney World plopped down in the middle of Japan. Exactly.
Very strange.
It was really bizarre. But, well, you know, a lot of times students want to know how, well, first of all, let's tell them what you do.
Wow.
Because
okay.
You do a lot.
So I am responsible for the user experience quality for the IBM Cloud, the end-to-end experience from the discovering of the IBM Cloud all the way to the use of the IBM Cloud and all of that. So yeah, I know not all of y'all go off and buy clouds, but that's what that's most of the is for large corporations, banks, insurance, those type of things that a company that wants a cloud environment, they'll go to IBM Cloud or cloud.ibm.com to buy a cloud. And that entire experience, I'm responsible for the user experience and the quality of that experience across 80 plus designers who work on the cloud, just the cloud platform.
And, you know, I always know, I know IBM, I know when people say cloud, I seriously, and I know kind of who Watson is or what Watson is, and I had to look it up. And so this says something about okay, that's ironic. I just said something and Siri said, what do you want? But the Watson Data Platform is a set of data and analytics features all available on the IBM Cloud Platform. The Watson Data Platform features embedded cognitive assisted machine learning. It provides user-specific tools and data and analytic services on the IBM Cloud.
Yeah, it's super nerdy. But imagine you're a bank and you have all the data from all of your customers. You put it all up into the cloud. That's how you do your mobile app to find your bank, I guess, balance,
Mhm.
deposit checks with your phone, all of those things. It goes up into the cloud in a secure environment, and we're responsible for that cloud to being safe, secure, and on the entire time and never breaking down. Redundancy systems. So you see IBM Cloud. Well, I don't say you see it. You experience it daily, but you just don't know it. At the grocery store, that's IBM Cloud. As you run it through the scanner, all of the things go to the ATM, that's being run by a cloud system. So it's all the things that you can't see. You don't see it.
Yay! You work on
Magic.
invisible stuff. You do work on magic. And I don't know, I'm probably so old, this only applies to me, but I grew up, it was like IBM meant IBM or Mac. And that is not what, so you guys don't think that at all. I mean, IBM is far beyond just personal computing.
Oh yeah, actually we don't do hardware
Yeah.
anymore at all. Not
Wow.
and all of the designers are issued Macs. So we all design on Macs. So
I love
hold-
that.
I'm listening. I'm
I'm
just
like,
shutting
where are you
my
going?
door.
Okay, see you later, Rose.
Okay, I'm listening. Go
Good
ahead.
talking to you.
I have to shut my door. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. And the other thing though is that, but I know that when I first met you, I could be imagining this, but you were doing letterpress stuff, weren't you?
Oh yeah. So in my spare time, I do letterpress. I guess I should maybe give my background a little bit to
Yeah.
kind of explain. So obviously the cloud wasn't a thing when I went to school back in the 90s.
I hear you. 90s.
Yeah. Like we literally got our classes by like dialing on the phone, and you had to argue with your roommate who got to use the phone first to press the thing to get your classes. Anyways, that's how old I am. And so I always liked design, but I didn't really know what it was. I actually went into business school thinking I was going into advertising, but I never got an advertising class. I was just doing business classes, and I'm like, wait, what is this? And then a friend of mine was in the School of Architecture, and he was drawing and doing cool stuff. And I'm like, well, let me check that out. And I switched to architecture my junior year. Finished my architecture degree, told my parents I don't want to be an architect. But what I did find out is in architecture school, we made our boards like with our drawings and like, all of the information of the buildings that you're making. And I enjoyed making my boards. And then my teacher was like, my prof was like, you should get into graphic design. I'm like, what is that? And so, so I took one of those classes at a community college where you learn like Illustrator and Photoshop and Quark.
Work.
Like all in one thing. Yeah, that one of those classes, and got through Illustrator, halfway through Photoshop, and then the prof was like, who needs a job? And then hold on a second.
And while she's saying
Okay.
that, you guys, just so you know, Quark is what InDesign used to be when it was like the evil, not Adobe program.
Oh, sorry. So yeah,
I was explaining what Quark was.
Yeah. So I get halfway through all of that, and then the teacher's like, who needs a job? I raised my hand, and I go to I don't even know who it was for, honestly. I didn't do any research. I was like, I need a job. I had my architecture portfolio. Granted, it's like all of these hand-drawn building things, like big sheets. No really Illustrator or Photoshop or anything. And I go downtown for an interview, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know Illustrator, I know Photoshop. Yeah, I know Quark, and I didn't. Disclaimer. But I got the job.
Yeah, you came and gave a talk about that at A-State about
lying.
Yep.
Yeah, and so, but I got the job, and it was at Enron, and y'all are too young to know this, but Enron was a corrupt oil and gas company, and you can Google it, but that was my first job. Did worked in corporate oil and gas for a few years. Went to grad school, got my MFA, and then I began teaching. So I spent
Is that
the
why
majority.
you went to get your MFA, was only to teach?
No, I actually got my MFA because the oil and gas industry was going under.
Yeah.
And we were all the companies were closing. And so I'm like, in fact, I was in grad school my first semester, and PG&E at the time was paying for it. And they're like, you may want to just stay in grad school because I think everybody's getting cut. Like all the companies went under. So so it was grad school because of unemployment. Interesting. So
That's okay.
so yeah, and then I ended up teaching, and I taught design, specifically typography, for 14 years, and I got into letterpress work. Kind of did a few shows and things, and some books and whatnot, and kind of for fun. And I just still do it on the side. And then IBM started their design studio, and I left academia to make software, which I knew zero about. But then I kind of lied and figured it out. So the lesson in here is fake it till you make it.
That's some
Yeah.
confidence. That's
something.
No, it makes sense. You're very, very smart, and you're very good with people. You're very good with your work. You're very talented. So,
Oh, gee, I'm blushing.
by the way, speaking of that, many, many years of typography, and yet sometimes people
Yeah.
don't make the connection. You're like, user interface, but typography, how do those
Ooh,
connect?
Actually, can I share something with you guys?
Please share. I think you can.
Okay, so yeah, can I?
Yeah.
I'm gonna share screen. Okay, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about IBM. Can you see? Empathy is our foundation.
Can
you guys see that?
Move it? Can you zoom out, like make it smaller, a little bit smaller?
Really smaller.
Might just be my screen.
What do you see?
For some reason mine cuts off when people see that. Can you guys chat or unmute and tell me what you guys see? Or can you guys see it okay? Is it just me? Okay, it's just my screen.
We can see it perfectly fine.
It's just
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
All right.
Professor Arnell. Gosh. Okay, so a real quick story about IBM. IBM is historically known as some nerdy place that no design was ever really there, and yeah, they were making software without designers. It was developers making software, which makes zero sense. And so in 2015, IBM decided to hire a bunch of designers, and they I think right now we have 800, 900 designers, something like that, across the world, all around the world. And yeah, all over the place. And so we have design studios all over the place. And if you go to IBM.com design, it's kind of gives you an overview of what we have and what we do. And so what's interesting about in the IBM.com/design, we have different things that you guys can use for free. So if you go into like practices and you go down to the IBM design language, you can click on that, and you have our entire library of components and things we use for the IBM cloud or IBM in general. So let's say I want to learn how to use a button and download it. I click in there, I can pick any one of these. I'm going to pick button. And in here, it'll give me an overview about what the button is for, the different types of buttons, when you should use a button. And then here's a little thing of like, this is what it looks like when it's in action and all of that stuff. So you can kind of preview it. You can also get the code for you developers out there if you want to copy and paste it out. And it gives you it gives you guidance on where everything is, all the different pieces, and the do's and don'ts. Like it goes here, but not here. We also have guidance. Yeah, no, this is open for everybody. So if you want to make your own web thing, it's like all out there. And so it's all of this information. And at the bottom are, where'd it go? Shows you how to do it, how you use the buttons, when you should use them. There's downloadable, I swear it's here, hold on. Well, shoot, I'm lying now. Oh, here it is, style code.
Oh my God.
And it goes into accessibility. Yeah, and it goes into accessibility, like rules about accessibility and accessibility testing for those who may be visually impaired. But you can kind of see in here, we've got date pickers. different things like this is how you would do dates. And this is what it would look like, and arrange with a calendar. All of these are already pre-done for us. And so to your question about, so what is design and typography and all of that? In fact, we have, let me back up a bit. We have this whole design system that we all use. We also have our own typeface that we use. This is downloadable as well. It's called Plex. You can download it here. You can go to the website and download it and use it. So it's the typeface that we use. And then here's just a little video on the typeface. But because, and this is the different families that you can use for IBM Cloud. And so it's kind of interesting being a former type professor, and I'm limited to just using Plex. But in a way, we're making an entire cloud, so we can't just go use like Helvetica or Gill Sans or something like this. So we all have to use the same thing. So it's really interesting. And you guys can totally play with it, download stuff, whatever you want. We've got icons, illustrations, and just like guides. But it's open to the public for anybody to use. What other things? Yeah, and so you can kind of flip through that and kind of take a look at it. But it's really interesting. Yeah, so we all use the same style guide, as for a lack of a better term. We also do enterprise design thinking, which I did a workshop with your school before.
Yes.
Where really, we use different methodologies to solve a problem, and that's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I think
my ad design people do that. They have to do, I know Dakota and Drew are on here. They did the IBM design thinking. I think some of the other students have done it with other professors, maybe Leslie and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's downloadable too. You go to enterprise design thinking, and the whole kit and all of the toolkit and everything's there for you. So what's really nice is IBM has made this all open source for developers, for designers. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about designing for software, it's a really good place to kind of fiddle around and take a look at it. One other thing I wanted to show you is like the IBM Cloud and kind of an example of what we do. So this video that I'm about to show you, we had 3 different login experiences. We had bought a couple of, or acquired a couple of businesses. And as a user, you'd actually log into 3 different places to do stuff, which was really messy. And so IBM always acquires things. And so this is a problem consistently. So if they buy a company, they have to figure out how to like attach it to our existing stuff. And so what we ended up doing was merging it all together into one solution where the user didn't feel like they're working in 3 different spaces. And so I'll show you a really quick video on that. See if that works. Let me do full screen. Here we go.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of that Plex typeface.
Yeah, so there's that. Oops, there. Yeah, so it's interesting to design in a space where, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Wait, was
where,
that video? Did that video have sound?
Oh yeah, it did. Oh,
Oh.
y'all didn't hear it? Oh, I had a little
That's what I figured. I figured
music.
it was probably just some sort of music or whatever. At least I
I'll put
didn't
it
hear
in
it.
the
Maybe you
Slack.
guys did.
You guys can watch it in the, I'll Slack it to you or put it in the chat.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's coming from a design background where you had a little more freedom of what you're able to choose from and what you're able to do. It is a little limiting that you have a design guide and standard, but at the same time, because of the size and the scale of this piece of software or this platform, you have to. So because you can't just be willy-nilly. The grid is super important. All of these foundational things up here. And in fact, one of the things I do for the platform is I run the crits, just like I did when I was a professor, which is really funny because I run the crits twice a week. They bring their stuff. They tell me what kind of feedback they're looking for. And we do a crit. It's just like school. And in fact, I have some former students who work at IBM. So it's very weird, but yeah, it's a fun place to work. The subject matter is super heavy though. Like I feel like we all should have an honorary computer science degree, like just to understand how the cloud works, because you have to design for it. And that is one thing that is a challenge for designers, is to understand the space in which you're designing. If I was designing maybe like a mobile app for grocery shopping, that's a little bit more attainable for me, like because I shop and I buy groceries and I'm the persona that would use the mobile app. But if I'm somebody who's designing an environment for a developer who wants to make a cloud, that is not me. I have never made a cloud. So it took a lot of like studying and understanding and talking to the developers who we work with, who are super nerdy and smart, to explain to us. And a lot of the times in the conversations, we say, can you draw it? Can you explain it in another way? Because it's really complicated. But that's what I love about it, though, is I feel like I'm learning more every day about how the cloud works. And yeah.
How much coding do you have to know?
Zero. That is a misconception of people think that if you're making software, you need to know how to code. But guess what? You don't. So the way that we have it set up is we have visual designers who work on, you make sure, like make the design language, make sure we have a grid, that kind of stuff. Then we have UX designers, which design the user experience, the flows. We have researchers who do user testing and customer feedback, so that type of stuff. And then we have front-end developers, which are the people who do the coding. So honestly, what happens is we have a flow that we need to make. We work with our researcher. She talks to customers, and then we get some direction from customers, and then we design the user experience. Just screen wireframing, get that tested with our researcher, and then once it's ready, we pass it to the developer to actually make. And so that we do not need to code at all. And so if you're trying to take extra classes to learn how to code, don't do it unless you want to do it, but it's not required. And when I look at portfolios, I mean, it's great. It's nice if you know how to do it. But for me, when I look at design portfolios, I really want to hear the story of what you were trying to solve. Like, I made this poster for X and the user was X, and the reason why I did this was this. And those type of stories are more important than, I know how to code or whatever, right? And so, yeah, you don't need to know how to code.
Actually, and what you were just saying is a good, so portfolios.
Yeah.
Yes, portfolios. So even if someone shows you a social media or print or anything else, it's a matter of understanding what was the objective, what was the problem solved, and how you went about it.
Yeah, and I look at portfolios all the time. I was a hiring manager, so I would hire people. I would hire designers, and so the thing we're looking for isn't like a pretty shiny thing at the end, and just that, like on a screen. We really want to hear the problem or the challenge that you were given. whether it's a poster you had to do for your typography class, what was the problem? What were you trying to, how are you going to try to resolve that? Who was your audience? And those are type of the questions that, or type of answers that we want to know. Because many times we would just see a final thing. Oh, here's a poster, here's a magazine spread or whatever. And that gives you no context on how that person thinks. Honestly, sometimes I'd rather just hear how the person thinks and then not really care about the final product. I've told designers who have portfolio pieces that maybe haven't been fully fleshed out to not actually spend more time on fleshing out the final piece, but really telling the story to where you got there. And even to the point of like, and this is where it went bad. And then the pivot, like if you can tell the story, and that's the most important part, because as a user experience designer, you are weaving a story or an experience for somebody. And so you need to be able to tell your story.
By the way, for
That
you
makes
guys,
sense.
on a side note, for you, those of you when you have portfolio capstone with me, you have to make process books, and that is just, you should be able to do the equivalent of that for every single piece. Maybe not make a book
Absolutely.
over everyone, but yeah.
You know, when I was a professor, I always told them about process, and everybody rolled their eyes. But I swear that is what they look for. People look for your process. They really, it's nice at the end, if it's nice and shiny, great. But it's really the meat, the story to where you is what's important. And so
Have you
that's
ever
my
had
bit of
problems?
advice.
Have you ever had problems with students at any time in your career where people coming in, not necessarily students, with portfolios that were way fancier, like the work was not as genuine to their talent or lack of talent as when you hired them?
Yeah, you know, that happens a lot with group projects, because sometimes group projects can be in disguise. Like you have these group projects and there's the one kid who did it all and the rest who put their name on it. And I've seen that. Like I've had portfolios show up at my desk and I see the same project over and over again. I'm like, oh, this is a group project. They all went to the same school. The thing is even at those group projects, the student who could articulate their contribution and really prove that they participated is the key. Like, but I've seen that a lot where I'll see two group projects, the same group of students. One will explain it and really what they did, and the other one would just show it up on the screen and pretend they helped. You can read through that, like, oh yeah, you didn't help, you just showed up. Yeah, those are a few of those. And then, you know, with any kind of portfolio, there are cases of people kind of plagiarizing and grabbing stuff off the web, and you kind of like, oh, I've seen that somewhere before. And so you have to be careful of that. But usually you can tell in their writing and the way they present their work if they've got the chops or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Group projects, dangerous.
I mean, it's good that it shows they know how to work in a team.
True.
But yeah. Do you ever, well, I guess you kind of mentioned this, but do you ever miss the just pure abstract connections? Well, I guess you do abstract connections. It's like what you do now seems very rational, very pragmatic, very.
But it's also abstract.
True.
I mean, like every day some new technology is out there that I have to figure out. Okay, so how does that work and what we're doing? And yeah, it's actually really hard to keep up with the different things. And
How do you do that?
No,
how do you keep up with it?
I actually have to read a lot of blogs about new technology. My feed in the morning, I kind of look at kind of trends in the cloud, you know, and I read it and maybe comprehend 30% of it, but at least I try to read it and look at the pictures, right? And
Yay, pictures.
Yeah, but there's new technology happening all the time that I have to kind of pay attention to, and because pretty soon we'll pivot and we'll do that and we'll use that technology. So it's something. Yeah, it's, you know, like when you make a book or you send something to the printer at a press, you know how it's going to work. You know how the press is going to run. You know how to pick your Pantone colors. You know what it's going to do.
Right.
In my case, I have to design for something I'm not exactly sure how it's going to get made. You know what I mean? Like, what colors can I use? Is this a new kind of color? Like, it's that kind of mental model. Is like, I'm designing something and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to get done in the world. And so you're always learning. It's new technology.
How do you ideate? How do you come up with, how do you brainstorm? How do you do it?
Oh, that's a big part of what we work on is it's just
I
kind
guess
of before
design
we start.
thinking.
Yeah. A lot of the times I encourage my designers to not even get to the computer. Like, you know how you all do thumbnails and sketches? We actually do the same thing too. We draw it on a piece of paper, and do sketches, pin them up. We talk about them, we create them just like school. And in fact, sometimes we bring in our hand done sketches in front of customers, like with fake little buttons that we wrote, button 1, button 2. And we give them the scenario, and then they press the piece of paper as if something was going to happen. And then we slip a piece of paper underneath saying, oh, well, there's your new window. And like, we fake it. But the thing is when you prototype low resolution like that, people aren't so distracted about how it looks, but are really focused on the mechanism of the process. And so we prefer not to make it look perfect until we've really figured out the steps of the process of the user experience.
Yes. I hope you all heard that. Yes.
Yeah. We use a lot of Sharpies and paper.
Do you use a lot of Post-it notes too, or is it just paper?
Yeah, I have quite a few on my desk right now.
What kind of job advice would you have for these people, especially considering, well, it could be overall, or it could be the dumpster fire that is 2020. What do you think?
Honestly, all the tech companies are hiring, regardless of COVID. From what I'm gathering in the industry, tech and UX is kind of doing okay, but I think things like print aren't so much because people aren't, buying physical things much anymore. So I don't know. I mean, if you've already got an idea that you want to go UX, keep going. If you're somebody who's print focused, it wouldn't hurt to diversify your portfolio and learn a little bit more about UX. It seems that the UX side is more marketable right now. I hate to say it, but that's kind of what it is right now. But
some of the people on the feed are in the group we have digital design, and plus all of our students have to take an interface design class and stuff like that. Just it depends on how far they want to go into that world. And in fact, our digital design degree, it's not my degree, it's another great professor's. I don't know if anybody in this group, but their new actually has like 9 classes in Swift coding and stuff like that. And
yeah, but you don't need a code.
But you'll be employable, really employable.
That's true. That's true. Depending, if you want to be a front-end developer, yeah, totally.
Yeah. So I guess it's for those of you who are not digital design majors, you can still go into UX, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So explain to them that if they're in typography right now and they're like, but how is this going to be UX?
Yeah, totally. Because it wasn't a thing I studied in school, not a thing, and I made the transition. You just have to understand and be able to put yourself in your user's shoes. That is it. Like, you're solving a problem. You could be solving a problem in your design classes of making a poster, but you're still sitting there. What do I have to do? I need to make sure that X, Y, and Z are on there, and what's it for? It's the same kind of mental model of like, I need to design this visual interface so this person can go from A to B. It's really just your thought process is what you really need. And if you know typography, great, but I think design schools teach you how to think. And that's actually the key of how do you solve a problem? Are you solving the problem through typography? Great. Are you solving the problem through a book design? Great. Are you solving the problem through an interface? Great. So it's the same process. You sit down with the problem, figure it out, ideate on it, and then test it and see if it works and then keep going. It's the same thing. I've some of, like I had mentioned, I had former students who are now at IBM. I was their typography teacher. They were great type students, but they're also great UX students or UX designers. And so I think the skill of being able to think through a problem carries over regardless. You can design a teacup, you can design whatever you're designing, it's the same process. And yeah.
So if a student applied to a position there that, I know you have many positions, and they had, for example, what many of our students have, a BFA in graphic design. And it's totally.
Totally. Because I've seen portfolios that was all type layouts and posters and stuff. No software, no UX at all. What we were looking for is somebody who had good visual chops, and that would be somebody we'd hire as a visual designer. We all know that not everybody studies UX or had the ability to study UX. A lot of visual designers who we've hired have transitioned to being UX designers while on the job. So they'll be like focusing on the visuals. And so a UX designer will design like the path of a user. Then they'll pass it to the visual designer to kind of make sure it aligns with the grid and all of the standards. And as a visual designer starts doing that and working with a UX designer, they start to learn how UX works. And so a lot of it is just on the job. I would totally not be embarrassed or shy to put a portfolio in that only has typography. If you can tell your story and say why this is interesting to you and speak to the user in your process, yeah, it's fine. I've seen tons of portfolios and we've hired them, no UX at all.
Excellent.
But you should still try it on your own.
Yeah.
Just try to do a little project on your own.
Yeah. Well, our students, they will at some point in one of their classes. It's just a matter of how much they will do. And I think some students wonder if it's like this other world with code. Not really.
Yeah, like totally no code. If you don't know code, that's fine. I think the proof is like if you just have like layouts and magazine or in posters, if we could see a grid, we could see good hierarchy, we could see good placement and good design choices, that tells us that you can design.
Yeah.
Just in a different format.
Yes. Hey, class, you're not a class, God, sorry. The people who are attending this, who happen to be students, do you guys want to ask questions in the, you can either ask it in the chat or you can turn off your mute and ask it. Whichever one. But ask your questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to start talking about Tokyo again.
I totally want to go back.
No.
That's actually on my list of after COVID where to go. I'm going back there because the new Mario World is open.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
Sorry, priorities. Here's a question.
Okay.
What is it? Is there anything really important that you had to learn about graphic design, digital design, UI design recently that you think all graphic digital design majors should learn ASAP? No,
great question.
Because it's actually foundational things that you should already know. There's really no magic thing. All the things you're learning in design school, how to use a grid, the hierarchy, all of that stuff is, if you know that, you're going to be a good designer. If you try to jump on kind of like trendy stuff, it'll be neat to know, but it's kind of like, it's not as good as just knowing the foundation. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's really not. Yeah, because I think your question's kind of geared towards like technology type stuff, like learning how to code or how to use certain software. Well, maybe. I would though. I don't know if you guys do this at school. Do y'all use InVision for prototyping or Sketch or?
Leslie, you can come and join us if you want to come on.
I would dabble in InVision if it's free too, I think for students. Well, to limited, like you can do a little bit, but you can make like fake prototypes like clickable prototypes in InVision, I would start fiddling with that.
How does InVision,
We
how does InVision compare
Yeah.
to Adobe XD?
Okay, here's a secret. Nobody uses Adobe products in the industry.
Especially after Adobe Max, man.
I didn't even bother going. But yeah, honestly, all of the major companies, we don't use Adobe at all. We use InVision, we use Sketch, we use what is it? Mural a lot to do ideation. Nobody does really uses Adobe.
By the way, they do use Adobe in other parts of the design world. Don't worry. But for that, yeah. I do know that Professor Joe, the professor who handles the digital design, Professor Ford, he has definitely talked about things like InVision and Sketch. And I know that
Yeah.
Leslie, you use Mural because you used that the other day, and I was like, "What is this?"
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm
totally.
using it this semester in my classes, and I don't know how the students feel about it, but I freaking love it.
Yeah,
So
it's amazing.
Yeah, that's how we, especially during COVID, that's how we've been ideating remotely a lot. So definitely Mural. And we use Slack all the time.
Yeah, Slack, by the way. So if any of you guys are like, Slack, why do you use it? Because everybody does.
Yeah.
Love it or hate it.
Oh, wait, here's another question.
Okay.
Would you say that living in a bigger city like Austin has been beneficial in your career by providing you more opportunities and connections? So I moved from Houston to Austin. So Austin is a tiny city comparatively.
Compared to Houston.
It's really not how big the city is, but is the city thriving in the industry you want to be in? Austin's small, but it's turned into a major tech hub. So all of the tech companies are here: Google, Facebook, Tesla now, IBM, Amazon, they're all here now. And so I don't think I'll ever move until I retire because I don't need to. But there are pockets like, if you work up in Seattle, Microsoft, all of those different things. And Silicon Valley, you've got all of those companies down in there. Raleigh, North Carolina, there's a big tech hub there. So you wouldn't have guessed in Raleigh. Yeah, major corporations are in Raleigh. So it's really not going to a big city. In fact, I wouldn't even bother moving to New York or anything, or Chicago, or just, it's really where it's the type of industry that you want to work in, you move to that city, and that's where you should be. It really has nothing to do with how big the city is or not. What I do like about a small city, though, is the network of the community is a lot smaller, so you know pretty much everybody in town. And so it's really easy to just run into people, talk to them. Well, not now with COVID, but having the connections and stuff in town.
By the way, though,
Yeah.
while she's saying small town, just so you guys know, I'm pretty sure Austin is larger than Memphis, and Memphis
Is
is
it?
Memphis is ginormous compared to Jonesboro, Arkansas. So
I think
I'm gonna look that
I don't,
up. I don't know.
I think Austin's less than 1 million.
Is it really?
I think so.
But just so when you said
maybe.
1 million, I think some of you might be thinking Austin is the capital of Texas, right?
Yeah, but you got Dallas and Houston, which are way bigger.
Right, way, way bigger.
Yeah.
Larger than Austin.
Like the hair.
Exactly.
Here's Chloe's got a question. What advice can you give to baby designers, or designers who they're fixing to start their career? I don't know, Chloe. I think a lot of it has to do with self-confidence.
Mhm.
I mean, if you really got if you got a mission, you want to work at this place, you got to believe in yourself, and it happens. I joke about fake it till you make it, but a lot of that has to do with having a goal and really pushing yourself to get to it. So it's really doing your research, understanding what you're getting into, and then just finding that thing and go for it. Then Grace is asking, any tips on how to get over being scared of software and programs? The thing is, Grace, is as new software comes out, everybody's got to learn it. And so there, you'll find though that a lot of them carry over, like shortcuts and things in Illustrator will translate to shortcuts and things in Sketch. So I don't know, for some reason, software tool companies tend to make it feel comfortable for people to transition to other things. So it's not completely disjointed. There's tons of like tutorials and things to look at too when you transition to new software, but don't make that be a blocker for you pushing towards something you want to do. Software should not impede that. Sarah asks, what do you think is the hardest part of breaking into the design industry? What stands out the most when reviewing a portfolio? Well, I think that's actually the same answer and question. So breaking into the design industry is the trick is standing out with your portfolio. So I think we see a lot of portfolios that are like your Squarespace, here's my picture and there's my content. And, you know, I think the ones that have been the most interesting are the ones that make me, are compelling, that I really want to work with this person because they have an interesting story. It's tricky though, because we do see a lot of them and they all start to blur together. But if there's some way that you can stick out, like tell a narrative or introduce yourself in a unique way, or even if you have an extra talent, let's say you're a designer and you want to get into UX, but you're also great. You also work as a barista at a coffee shop and you know everything about coffee. I would love to hear the story of how you kind of combine those worlds. Like, oh, you know, like maybe your site is like these coffee bags and then you click on each coffee bag and it shows your work. I mean, it's like it'll make me remember, oh, remember that portfolio where the theme was this coffee maker and they're working through college as a barista or whatever. And that's the kind of stuff that I'll remember of like your hobbies or something cool about you. Like I've hiked so many peaks or mountains and this is the next mountain I'm about to hike. You know, like just something that makes you stick out, because I think people are a little shy to be, I guess, vulnerable in their portfolio. But that is what makes you stick out, because all of the stuff kind of looks the same one after a while.
Yeah. By the way, do you ever follow any designers you meet on social media?
Yeah, I guess I do, but I don't know. Like, yeah,
It's not
I
something.
do.
Okay.
It's mostly typography because I'm still nerding out on that. But
As you should.
yeah,
And it's like Chloe's got a question. When your brain is going fried, what are some ways to boost your creativity?
oh, go outside. I am a big outdoor lady. And so I always try to go like a good camping trip will always clear my mind, or
Well, you
good
are also
hike
a
or
Boy
good.
Scout leader, right? Boy Scout.
Yeah, I
You're
know,
like
right?
super Boy Scout leader.
Yeah. So during COVID, actually recently, I started raising chickens. And so
Love you, Rose.
yeah. So when I'm kind of like fried, I'll go out and hang out with my chickens. And it's actually pretty cool, like, you know, and it's kind of calming. And so I love to go outside and kind of reboot, because sometimes when you're just staring at a computer, that doesn't help anybody or anything. And so yeah, go outside.
Well, you
Oh
guys.
yeah, Austin is smaller than Memphis.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, you were right. You were very right. I
Told
was
ya.
very surprised. So, but I did want them to know, I know that not everybody who's on this meeting, but a lot of students find Memphis and Little Rock to be ginormous. And so,
Well, if you want to get into UX, don't go to those cities. Go to Austin.
yeah.
I hate to say that, you're going to make my home prices go up, but yeah, go to Austin.
Yeah, Memphis probably isn't the best. There are places. I mean, like AutoZone has.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, AutoZone corporate headquarters. In fact, we have some former students working there. But I mean, if it's a matter of a ton of places, obviously tech cities are going to be better to go to. You guys, we're gonna start to finish up pretty soon here. So what other questions do you have for Rose? Anything at all?
I was gonna ask a question. So, what resources would you say that you know of that would help other designers to like kind of grow some?
Oh, hey, thanks for the question, Gavin. Wow, there's so much out there. I guess it depends on what you want to learn about. Uh, if you haven't started reading Medium articles, I would suggest you do that. Medium
I'll put
is,
the link.
is somewhat curated, and so a lot of designers are talking on there and writing articles, really interesting things. So definitely go check out Medium. Yeah, I think for me, that's kind of like the one good casual reading that I do that is design related, because you can kind of specify that. But
And it's not too academic.
Yeah.
It's not.
no. Yeah, check that out. I would highly suggest that. And honestly, I don't know how active y'all are on LinkedIn, but every once in a while, people will post articles and things that are really interesting based off of a subject matter or a trend or new technology or some design thing. If you're not already on LinkedIn, you should just at least do that and kind of see what things people are posting, because it's very business related and or like technology related. I actually have my LinkedIn on most of the day.
Really?
Yeah, most of the day. A lot of people do. It's like a news. It's like the Facebook for business. You kind of
Yeah.
just get this news feed of interesting articles, interesting business things, and so.
And just so you guys know, when you have professional practice with me, when you form your own brand, and not that you're a brand on as much, but you will have to be on LinkedIn. And I know when I get that look from so many students of like, LinkedIn, that's boring. Well, remember right now what Rose is saying. And also, there's boring and there's employed. And so, it's
It's
so many-
interesting articles. There's interesting articles that may relate to you getting a job. So,
Mhm.
and being more informed.
Yeah. Good question though, Gavin.
Yeah.
Anything? Oh, goodness.
I just want to remind you to take a picture.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Catherine.
Yes, and in
welcome.
fact,
I need
thank you,
evidence
thank
for
you.
my boss.
And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.